Welcome, dear listeners, to our cozy corner where stories come alive, stories that make you think about what truly matters in life. My name is Frank Sterling, and tonight I invite you on a journey through the desert roads of Nevada, circa 1958, where shadows keep their secrets and the human soul faces its ultimate test. Settle into your favorite chair, dim the lights, and allow yourself to drift back to an era when roads were longer, nights were darker, and the choice between good and evil seemed simpler than it really is. Tonight, I'll tell you a story called Shadow on the Highway, the tale of Jack Hartley, an ordinary man with extraordinary problems, who one night encountered a mysterious hitchhiker on a desolate road. This meeting changed not only his life, but forced him to reconsider what we call wealth, happiness, and human dignity. If you enjoy stories like these, stories that make you think, feel, and remember, I would be deeply grateful if you'd support our channel with a subscription. Your likes help these stories find new listeners, and your comments are the most precious reward a storyteller can receive. Share your thoughts. Tell us what you felt, what memories this story awakened in you. And now, my dear friends, we set out on our journey. Picture this: 1958, Nevada, endless desert under a starlit sky, and a lone automobile whose headlights pierce the darkness. So, we begin. There are roads that lead to nowhere. There are nights when the past meets the present on the desert highways of Nevada. And there are stories better left untold in the light of day. This is one of those stories. August 1958. Highway 95, somewhere between Reno and Las Vegas. The time was midnight. Chapter 1. Road to Nowhere. Jack Hartley had been driving his truck across the desert highway for 4 hours. 32 years old, a Korean War veteran, a man who knew the value of every dollar and every mile. In his shirt pocket lay a bill from the bank, $2,800 in debt. In his wallet, $43 and some change. This haul would earn him $300, a drop in the ocean of his problems. Jack thought about Mary, about how she had looked at him before he left, not angrily, not reproachfully, worse, with pity. "If you don't find a way to fix this situation, Jack, I don't know what will become of us." The radio crackled with static as he searched for a clear station. Country music faded in and out, mixed with the distant voices of late-night talk shows and the occasional weather report. Temperature in Las Vegas holding steady at 80 degrees. Clear skies expected tomorrow. "Come on, old girl," Jack muttered to his truck. "Just 100 more miles and we're home." The engine coughed once, then settled back into its steady rhythm. The headlights carved a tunnel through the darkness, illuminating the endless ribbon of asphalt that stretched toward the distant glow of Las Vegas. That's when he saw the figure on the roadside. An old man stood beside a crooked road sign, leaning on a walking stick. His clothes were old-fashioned, a suit that might have been stylish 20 years ago. In the glare of the headlights, his face appeared gaunt, like a man who had seen too much. Jack slowed the truck and pulled over. "You need help?" he called through the open window. "If you're heading toward Las Vegas, I'd be grateful for a ride," the old man replied. His voice had a strange quality, not quite an echo, but something that made Jack's skin crawl. The old man climbed into the cab with surprising agility for his age. His presence immediately changed the atmosphere. The air grew colder, and the silence deeper. "How far you going?" Jack asked. "Not far. I'll tell you where to stop." They drove in silence for several minutes. Jack stole glances at his passenger. Something about the old man wasn't right. Maybe it was how he sat too still, or how his breathing was barely audible.
"What were you doing out there on the roadside at this hour?"
"Waiting," the old man said after a pause.
"For what?"
For someone like you. Jack wanted to ask what that meant, but the radio caught his attention. Strange sounds were coming from the speaker, not quite music, not quite voices.
"Don't mind that," the old man said calmly. "Radio waves behave strangely in the desert, especially at night."
"You travel this road often?"
"More often than I'd like." The old man paused. "Tell me, son, are you happy?"
The question caught Jack off guard. That's a strange question, but not a strange answer. I can see it in your eyes. Weariness, desperation. You're looking for a way out, aren't you? Jack felt uncomfortable. How did this stranger know about his problems?
"I don't know what you're talking about."
Of course you do. Debts, a wife who's losing patience, a future that seems increasingly bleak. Am I right? After a long pause, Jack said quietly, "How do you know?" "Because I've seen many men like you. Desperate men. Men willing to do anything for a chance to change their lives." The wind picked up outside, and the radio began to hiss with static. "Would you like me to tell you a story?" the old man asked. "About men who found what they were looking for, but paid too high a price for it?" "What story?" "The story of a truck full of gold that disappeared in the desert 10 years ago." Chapter 2: The Strange Passenger. The radio suddenly went silent, leaving the cab in quiet broken only by the rumble of the engine and the whisper of tires on asphalt. Jack reached for the tuning knob, but the old man gently touched his hand. "Leave it," he said. "Sometimes silence speaks louder than words." The old man's touch was cold as ice, and Jack involuntarily pulled his hand away. The cab had definitely grown colder. Maybe the air conditioning was broken and blowing cold air? But his old truck didn't have air conditioning. "Tell me about this truck," Jack said, not understanding why he was so interested in this story. Maybe because the old man told it as if he had witnessed the events himself. The old man leaned back in his seat, his fingers slowly stroking the handle of his walking stick. In the light of the dashboard, Jack noticed that the handle had a strange shape, not round, not square, but something in between, with patterns that seemed familiar but which he couldn't identify. "It was 10 years ago," the old man began, his voice sounding like an echo in an empty church. "Summer of 1948. The heat was so intense that the asphalt melted and the air shimmered like water. 2 men, a driver and a guard, were carrying cargo from Reno to Las Vegas. Special cargo. Gold? Gold. Bars, each weighing 20 pounds. 40 of them. 800 pounds of pure gold, son. In those days, a fortune that would last several lifetimes." Jack quickly calculated in his head. 800 pounds of gold. Even at current prices, it was an enormous sum. Enough to pay off his debts, buy a new truck, a house for Mary, maybe even a small business. What happened to them? "A sandstorm," the old man said, his voice becoming quieter, almost a whisper. "It came suddenly, as often happens in the desert. Visibility dropped to 0. The driver lost the road, turned the wrong way. When the storm ended, the truck had vanished, as if the earth had swallowed it." Jack knew how dangerous sandstorms in the desert could be. He had been caught in one himself several years ago. Sand gets everywhere, in your eyes, nose, engine. Visibility really does drop to 0, and it's easy to lose your bearings.
Did they search for them?
Of course they searched, the old man smiled grimly. Police, federal agents, private detectives. They combed every inch of desert within a 100-mile radius. They found tire tracks that ended at the edge of the road. They found some personal belongings, the driver's wallet, an empty canteen. But the truck seemed to have dissolved into thin air.
Maybe they were robbed? Maybe. Or maybe they just got lost and died of thirst. The desert doesn't forgive mistakes, son. It takes what it wants and rarely gives it back.
Jack felt a chill run down his spine. Something in the old man's voice, in the way he told this story, made him believe every word, as if he really knew what had happened to that truck.
Do you think they're still out there, in the desert?
The old man turned to him, and something strange flickered in his eyes. Not quite a smile, not quite sadness.
I don't think, son. I know.
Silence hung between them, heavy and oppressive. Jack focused on the road, trying not to think about the old man's words. But thoughts crept into his head like persistent flies. 800 pounds of gold, somewhere out there, in the desert. Maybe just a few miles from the road. Maybe waiting for someone brave enough to find it. Nonsense, he muttered under his breath.
What did you say? The old man asked.
Nothing. It's only a story, a legend. If there really was gold out there, someone would have found it by now.
The old man laughed, a sound that made Jack shiver. The laughter was dry, like the rustle of dead leaves, and there was nothing cheerful about it.
Do you think the desert gives up its secrets so easily? He asked. Do you think gold just lies on the surface, waiting to be picked up? No, son. The desert hides what it wants to hide, and it shows only to those who are willing to pay the price.
What price?
Different for different people. For some time. For others, memory. For still others, he paused, for still others, their soul.
Jack snorted, trying to hide his growing unease. You talk like a character from a cheap horror novel.
And you talk like a man who has never seen real miracles, the old man replied calmly. Tell me, son, are you happy? Satisfied with your life? The question caught Jack off guard. He opened his mouth to answer yes, but the words stuck in his throat. Was he happy? Was he satisfied with his life? Debts that grow every month. A wife who threatened to leave him. A truck that could break down at any moment. A job that barely allowed him to make ends meet.
That's none of your business, he said, finally.
Of course not, the old man agreed. But I see it in your eyes, son. Weariness, despair, fear of the future. You're looking for a way out, aren't you? A way to change your life.
Jack gripped the steering wheel tighter. How did this old man know about his problems? He hadn't told him anything personal.
I don't know what you're talking about, he lied.
Don't you? The old man leaned closer, and Jack felt the cold emanating from him. Then why are your hands shaking? Why are you gripping the steering wheel so tightly? Why do I see in your eyes the same hunger I saw in the eyes of that truck driver 10 years ago?
Stop it, Jack said sharply. I don't know what game you're playing, but I don't like it.
The old man leaned back, his face becoming calm and indifferent again. No game, son, just conversation between fellow travelers. But if you're not interested, he shrugged.
They drove in silence for several minutes. Jack tried to focus on the road, but his thoughts kept returning to the old man's words. 800 pounds of gold, somewhere nearby, maybe just a few hours' walk from the road. He thought about Mary, about how happy she would be if he came home with money. Enough money to pay off the debts, buy her a beautiful dress, maybe even that house with a white fence she dreamed of. He imagined her face when he told her their troubles were over.
"Where exactly did this happen?" he asked suddenly.
The old man turned to him, and a spark of satisfaction flickered in his eyes.
"About 20 miles from here. There's an old dirt road that leads into the desert. Most people don't even notice it. It's overgrown with brush and barely visible. But if you know where to look, do you know where it is?"
I know many things, son. The question is, are you ready to learn? Jack looked at his watch. It was still 2.5 hours to Las Vegas. If he delivered the cargo on time, he would get $300. But if the old man was telling the truth, if there really was gold out there— "This is madness," he said aloud. "The greatest discoveries were made by madmen," the old man replied. "Columbus was mad when he set out to find a new route to India. The gold prospectors were mad when they went to California. But some of them found what they were looking for."
"And some died in the desert."
"Yes," the old man agreed. "Some died. But isn't it better to die trying to change your life than to live slowly dying of despair?" Jack didn't answer. He thought about the deaths, about Mary, about a future that seemed increasingly bleak with each passing day. Maybe the old man was right. Maybe it was worth the risk. The radio suddenly came to life, and a voice poured from the speaker. "The search for the missing truck continues. Police ask anyone with information about the whereabouts of a black Mack truck carrying valuable cargo from Reno to Las Vegas to contact the nearest police station. Driver Frank Morrison, 35 years old, and guard Joe Kelly, 28 years old, are considered missing." Jack abruptly turned off the radio. His hands were shaking. "This is impossible," he whispered. "That broadcast, it's 10 years old."
The old man smiled, and his smile was cold as a gravestone.
"Time flows differently in the desert, son. Past and present sometimes meet like old friends." Jack looked at the old man, then at the radio, then back at the road. His heart was pounding like a hammer on an anvil. What was happening? Who was this man? And why did he feel that his life was about to change forever?
"The next turn is close," the old man said quietly. "Very close."
Chapter 3. The Legend of Gold. The truck's headlights picked out mile markers from the darkness, flashing by like ghosts. Jack read the numbers mechanically: 127, 128, 129. Las Vegas was getting closer, but each mile seemed endless. Beside him, the old man sat motionless as a statue, his breathing so quiet that Jack sometimes doubted whether he was breathing at all. "Tell me more," Jack said suddenly, surprising himself with his words. "About that truck, about the men who drove it." The old man turned his head, and in the light of the dashboard, his face looked like a mask of old leather.
"Why do you want to know, son?"
"I don't know," Jack answered honestly. "Just curious." "Curious," the old man repeated, and notes of mockery could be heard in his voice. "Or are you already thinking about finding it?" Jack didn't answer, but the old man seemed to read the answer in his silence. "Frank Morrison," he began, his voice becoming softer, almost hypnotic. "A good man, honest, had been working as a driver for 15 years. Not one accident, not one complaint. Wife, 2 children, a boy and a girl. A house in the suburbs of Reno with a white fence and rose bushes." Jack winced.
A white fence that was exactly the kind of house Mary dreamed of. Was he in debt too? Of course, the old man nodded. Medical bills. His daughter had polio. Treatment cost a fortune. Frank went into debt up to his ears trying to save the child. Did he save her? The girl recovered, but the debts remained. The bank threatened to take the house. His wife worked 2 shifts, but there still wasn't enough money. The old man paused. A familiar story, isn't it? Too familiar. Jack felt his stomach tighten. He imagined himself in Frank Morrison's place, a desperate father ready to do anything for his family. And what happened that night? A routine run, the old man continued. Frank and Joe Kelly, the guard, were supposed to deliver the cargo to Las Vegas by morning. 40 gold bars, each marked with a serial number, each accounted for. Simple work for experienced men. But something went wrong. The sandstorm started around midnight. The old man looked through the windshield as if seeing events from 10 years ago. At first just wind, then a wall of sand, hundreds of feet high. Visibility dropped to 0 in minutes. Jack knew what such storms looked like. He had seen them from a distance, huge brown walls that swallowed the horizon. Getting caught in such a storm in a truck was any trucker's nightmare. Frank lost the road, the old man continued. In such a storm, it's easy to lose your bearings. The compass is useless when you can't see the stars. He turned off the highway, thinking it was a detour, drove through the desert until he got stuck in the sand. And what did they do? They waited for the storm to end. But the storm lasted all night. And when dawn came, they realized they were lost. Nothing but sand and cacti all around. No landmarks, no roads. Jack imagined the scene. 2 men in a stuck truck, surrounded by endless desert, water running out, no food, and the nearest town hundreds of miles away. Did they have a radio? They did, but communication is poor in the desert. Mountains block the signal. They tried to call for help, but no one could hear them. How long did they last? The old man was silent for so long that Jack thought he wouldn't answer. 3 days, he said finally. 3 days under the scorching sun. The water ran out on the 2nd day. On the 3rd day, Joe Kelly died. Frank lasted a few more hours. How do you know this? Jack asked. If no one found them, where do such details come from? The old man turned to him, and something strange flickered in his eyes. Not quite sadness, not quite regret. Who said no one found them? A chill ran down Jack's spine. What do you mean? I mean the desert is full of secrets, son, and some of them are better left untouched. The radio came to life again, but now only static came from it. Strange, rhythmic sounds that resembled breathing or whispering. Jack tried to change the station, but all frequencies were filled with the same sound. Turn it off, the old man said quietly. Why? Because some voices are better not listened to. Jack turned off the radio, and the cab was filled with silence again. But now this silence seemed alive, full of invisible presences. You found them, Jack said suddenly. It wasn't a question, but a statement. The old man didn't answer, but his silence was more eloquent than any words. You found the truck and took the gold. I found many things in the desert, the old man said finally. But not everything you find can be taken. And not everything you take can be kept. What does that mean? It means the gold is still out there, son, waiting, as it has waited for 10 years. Jack felt his pulse quicken. Where exactly? The old man smiled slowly, like sunrise over the desert.
Do you really want to know? Are you ready to pay the price for this knowledge?
What price? Turn off the road, leave your cargo, risk everything for a chance to change your life. Jack thought about Mary, about the debts, about a future that seemed increasingly hopeless. $300 for delivering cargo that was a drop in the ocean of his problems. But 800 pounds of gold? This is madness, he said, but his voice no longer held its former certainty. Of course it's madness, the old man agreed. But isn't it madness to continue living a life that's slowly killing you? Isn't it madness to cling to a job that barely allows you to survive when nearby lies wealth capable of changing everything? What if there's no gold there? What if it's just a story?
Then you'll lose one load of canned goods and earn a lesson for life, the old man shrugged. But if the gold is there...
He didn't finish the sentence, but Jack understood. If the gold was there, his life would change forever. He could pay off his debts, buy a new truck, a house for Mary, maybe even start his own business. "Where's the turn?" he asked, surprising himself with his words. The old man pointed ahead, where in the light of the headlights appeared a barely visible break in the brush by the roadside. "There, do you see the old sign? It's almost fallen, but still standing." Jack peered into the darkness and indeed saw a crooked metal sign, half hidden by bushes. There were some letters on it, but they were impossible to read. "That's a private road," he said. "Maybe someone's property."
"It was once," the old man replied. "An old mine, closed before the war. Now there are only ghosts and memories there."
Jack slowed down. The turn was very close. A few more seconds and he would drive past, continue on to Las Vegas, deliver the cargo, get his $300, and return to his old life. Or, how long would it take to get to that place? An hour, maybe an hour and a half. The road is bad, but passable. And back? If you find what you're looking for, the return journey won't matter. What did that mean? Jack wanted to ask, but the turn was already there. He had to decide now. He thought about Mary, about her last words before leaving, about debts that grew every month, about a future that seemed increasingly bleak, about a chance, perhaps the only chance, to change everything. Jack turned the steering wheel to the right. The truck left the asphalt for the dirt road, and the cab filled with the sound of stones hitting the undercarriage. The headlights illuminated a narrow path that wound between cacti and boulders, leading into the depths of the desert. "Good, son," the old man said, and satisfaction could be heard in his voice. "Very good. Now we can begin the real journey." Jack didn't answer. He concentrated on the road, trying not to think about what he had just done. Behind them, the asphalt of Highway 95 disappeared into the darkness like the last link to the normal world. Ahead lay the desert, full of secrets and dangers. And somewhere out there, if the old man was to be believed, gold was waiting. Chapter 4. Temptation. The dirt road was worse than Jack had expected. What had looked like a path from a distance turned out to be a strip of packed earth, rutted and strewn with rocks. The truck bounced and swayed like a ship in a storm, and the suspension creaked and groaned under the load. "How much farther?" Jack asked, gripping the steering wheel tighter. "Not far," the old man replied. He sat calmly despite the jolting, as if his body were weightless. "Beyond that hill." Jack looked ahead, where in the light of the headlights he could see a low hill covered with cacti and brush. The road curved around it to the right, disappearing into shadow.
Tell me again about that place. Where exactly did the truck get stuck?
In an old riverbed, the old man answered. Long ago, water flowed there, but now it's just a depression in the ground. The sand there is soft, deep, easy to get stuck if you don't know the way.
And you know it?
I know many roads in the desert, son. Some lead to treasure, some to death. Sometimes it's the same road. Jack didn't like that answer, but he had already gone too far to turn back. The cargo of canned goods in the back rattled and banged with every bump. He thought about what he would tell the customer if he didn't deliver the goods on time. Most likely, there would be no more work from this company. But if the old man was telling the truth— "Tell me honestly," Jack said suddenly, "did you really see that truck? Or is this just a story you tell to hitchhikers?" The old man turned to him, and in the light of the dashboard, his face looked like a mask of ancient leather. "You want honesty, son? Fine. I didn't just see that truck. I was there when Frank Morrison took his last breath." A chill ran down Jack's spine. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I found them on the third day. Joe Kelly was already dead, sitting in the cab with open eyes, staring into emptiness. Frank was still breathing, but barely. He saw me and tried to say something."
What?
He said, "Take care of my family." And then, "The gold is cursed. Don't touch it." Jack felt his mouth go dry. "And what did you do?" "I buried them," the old man said simply. "Dug graves in the shadow of the truck. Said a few words over their bodies. It was the least I could do."
And the gold?
The gold remained in the truck. 40 bars, each weighing 20 pounds. I could have taken them. No one would have known. But— he paused. "But the dead sometimes don't want to let go of what belonged to them in life."
What does that mean?
"It means Frank and Joe are still there, son, guarding their cargo, waiting for someone who can take the gold and use it properly." Jack wanted to laugh, to say it was nonsense, that the dead don't guard anything. But something in the old man's voice, in his absolute certainty, made him believe. "Why are you telling me this? Why me specifically?" "Because you're like Frank," the old man replied. "The same desperate look, the same willingness to risk everything for family, the same pain in your eyes." The truck crested the hill, and Jack saw what lay beyond it. A valley surrounded by low cliffs, bathed in moonlight. In the center of the valley was a dark spot, something large and motionless. "Over there," the old man said, pointing ahead. "Do you see?" Jack peered into the darkness. Yes, there was definitely something there. Something the size of a truck. "Is that it?" he asked, feeling his heart pound. "That's it." Jack slowly descended into the valley, the headlights illuminating the uneven surface of the old riverbed. The sand here really was soft. The wheels sank several inches with each revolution. The closer they got, the clearer the outline of the object ahead became. It really was a truck, large, black, half buried in sand. It stood at an angle, as if trying to escape from a sand trap, but stuck forever. "My God," Jack whispered, "it's really here." "I told you so," the old man said calmly. Jack stopped his truck a few yards from the find. In the light of the headlights, the black truck looked like a giant beetle, half buried in sand. The cab was covered with decades of dust, the windows clouded, but the general outline was clearly distinguishable. "Mac," Jack read the inscription on the radiator grill, 1947 model. "The very one," the old man confirmed. Jack turned off the engine, and the silence of the desert crashed down on them like a heavy blanket. He sat for several seconds, looking at the truck, trying to believe what he was seeing.
Is the gold in the back?
In a special compartment under the floor of the cargo area. Frank showed me where to look before he died. Jack opened the door and got out. The desert air was cool and dry, full of the scents of sagebrush and dust. The stars overhead burned so brightly it seemed you could reach out and touch them. The old man also got out of the cab, but he moved strangely, as if his feet barely touched the ground. In the moonlight, his figure seemed translucent. "Come," he said, "let's see what time has done to Frank Morrison's treasure." They approached the black truck. Up close, it looked even more eerie, like a giant coffin standing in the middle of the desert. Sand had drifted almost to the windows of the cab, and the metal was covered with rust and patina. Jack peered into the cab through the side window. It was dark inside, but he could make out the outlines of seats, steering wheel, dashboard. On the passenger seat lay something dark, maybe clothes, maybe something else. "Are they still in there?" he asked.
Their bodies? No, I told you I buried them. But their spirits? The old man shrugged. Who knows where the spirits of the dead remain?
Jack walked around the truck and stopped at the rear. The cargo area was covered with a tarp that had turned to rags over the years. Underneath, he could see wooden crates and metal containers. "How do you open the compartment?" "There's a hidden handle under the left edge of the cargo area," Frank showed me. Jack found the handle and pulled. There was a screech of rusty metal, and part of the floor of the cargo area lifted, revealing a dark space below. The old man approached and directed the beam of a flashlight into the compartment. Jack hadn't noticed where he got the flashlight. In the light of the beam, gold gleamed. The bars lay in neat rows, each the size of a brick, each with stamped numbers and marks. 40 pieces, as the old man had said. 800 pounds of pure gold. "My God!" Jack whispered. "It's real! It's really here!" "Of course it's real," the old man said. "I told you the truth." Jack reached out and touched one of the bars. The metal was cold and heavy, absolutely real. He lifted the bar. It weighed more than expected, and in the moonlight, the gold shone like frozen sunlight. "How much is this worth?" he asked. "At current prices?" "About $1 million, the old man replied calmly. $1 million! Jack felt dizzy. $1 million! That was more than he could earn in a lifetime. It would be enough to pay off his debts, buy a house, provide Mary with everything she dreamed of.
But there's one problem, the old man added.
"What? How are you going to get it out? Your truck won't handle that weight. And if it does, how will you explain where you got the gold?" Jack hadn't thought about that. 800 pounds, that was almost half a ton. His old truck barely handled regular cargo. "I could take it in parts," he said, "a few bars at a time."
You could, the old man agreed, but then you'd have to come back here again and again, and the desert doesn't like to be disturbed too often.
"What do you mean?"
The old man didn't answer. He looked at the gold with an expression Jack couldn't understand. Not greed, not admiration, something else. Sadness? Regret?
"Take 1 bar," the old man said suddenly. "Just 1. As proof that you were here." "Just 1? But there's a whole fortune here."
"That's exactly why just 1. Gold isn't just metal, son. It's temptation, a curse. The more you take, the more you want, and desire can destroy a man."
Jack hesitated.
One bar was worth about $25,000, huge money, but not enough to solve all his problems.
And the rest? The rest will wait, as it has waited for 10 years. Jack looked at the gold, then at the old man, then at the gold again. The temptation was enormous. Here lay wealth he could only dream of. But something in the old man's words, in his warning tone, made him hesitate.
"Why are you helping me? What's in it for you?"
The old man smiled sadly, like a man who had seen too much.
Maybe I just want someone to make the right choice. Maybe I'm tired of seeing greed destroy people.
Jack took one bar and put it in his jacket pocket. The metal was heavy and cold, like a piece of frozen sun.
"Good," the old man said. "Very good. Now we need to leave."
"Why? We just found this place."
"Because the desert is waking up. And when it wakes up, it's better to be far away from here." Jack didn't understand what he meant, but something in the old man's tone made him alert. He closed the compartment and stepped away from the truck. That's when he heard the sound. Distant, metallic, like the clanking of chains. It came from somewhere deep in the desert, getting louder. "What is that?" Jack asked. The old man didn't answer. He was already walking towards Jack's truck, moving faster than before. "We need to leave, right now." The sound of chains grew louder, and now other sounds joined it. The screech of metal, the rustle of sand, something else Jack couldn't identify. He ran to his truck, his heart pounding in his chest. What was happening? What were those sounds? When he reached the cab, the old man was already sitting in the passenger seat. "Start the engine," he said. "Quickly." Jack turned the ignition key. The engine coughed, but didn't start. "Come on!" the old man shouted. Jack tried again. This time the engine came to life, and the truck shuddered. The sounds from the desert grew louder. Now it was definitely chains, heavy, metallic, dragging across sand. And something else. Voices? Or just wind? Jack put it in gear and stepped on the gas. The wheel spun in the sand, but then caught, and the truck lurched forward. In the rearview mirror, Jack could see the black truck standing in the moonlight. And beside it, shadows were moving. Two figures that cast no shadows themselves. "Don't look back," the old man said quietly. "Just drive." But Jack had already looked back, and what he saw made him press the gas even harder. Two figures stood beside the black truck. Even at a distance, he could see they were men in work clothes. One tall, the other shorter. They watched the departing truck, and there was something sad, almost grateful in their postures. Frank Morrison and Joe Kelly. Jack knew it with absolute certainty. The dead who had been guarding their gold for 10 years. Chapter 5. Disappearance. The truck raced along the dirt road, bouncing over ruts and swaying from side to side. Jack gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white, and in his jacket pocket the gold bar knocked against his ribs with every jolt. His heart pounded so loudly it drowned out the roar of the engine. "What was that?" he asked, not taking his eyes off the road. "Those figures, was that them?" The old man sat silently, staring through the windshield. In the light of the dashboard, his face seemed even more gaunt than before, as if the recent events had drained him of his remaining life force. "Answer me!" Jack shouted. "What the hell is going on?" "You got what you came for," the old man said finally. His voice sounded strange, quieter than before, with some kind of echo. The gold in your pocket, proof that the story was true.
But those people, they were dead.
Yes, dead for 10 years.
Jack felt a chill run down his spine. Then how could I see them?
The desert is full of mysteries, son. The boundary between life and death is thinner here than in other places, especially at night.
The road began to climb uphill, and the engine worked harder. Jack shifted to a lower gear, praying that the old truck wouldn't stall. He needed to get out of here, back to the highway, to the normal world where the dead stayed dead and gold wasn't guarded by ghosts.
Why did they let me go? Why did they let me take the gold?
Because you took only what you needed, the old man replied. 1 bar, no more. Frank and Joe understand need. They were desperate themselves.
What if I had taken more? The old man didn't answer, but his silence was more eloquent than any words. They reached the top of the hill, and ahead appeared Highway 95, a black ribbon of asphalt illuminated by moonlight. Jack felt relief seeing the familiar road. A few more minutes, and he would be safe.
"Stop here," the old man said suddenly.
"What? Why?"
"I need to get out."
"But we haven't reached the highway yet. It's still miles to the nearest town."
"Stop," the old man repeated, and there was such authority in his voice that Jack involuntarily pressed the brakes.
The truck stopped in a cloud of dust. The old man opened the door and got out, but didn't close the door behind him. Cold desert air rushed into the cab. "Wait," Jack said. "I'll give you a ride to town. It's the least I can do after." He turned to the passenger seat and fell silent. The seat was empty. Jack jumped out of the cab and looked around. The desert stretched in all directions, bathed in moonlight. Cacti and brush cast sharp shadows on the sand, but the old man was nowhere to be seen.
"Hey!" he shouted. "Where are you?"
Only an echo answered him, reflecting off distant rocks. Jack walked around the truck, looked under the cargo area, checked every place where a person could hide. Nothing. The old man had vanished as suddenly as he had appeared.
"This is impossible," Jack muttered. "People don't just disappear."
But even saying this, he understood that in the last hour many impossible things had happened. A radio broadcast from 10 years ago. A truck with gold standing in the desert. Ghosts of dead drivers. Maybe the old man's disappearance was just another impossible event in this impossible night. Jack climbed back into the cab and closed the door. His hands were shaking as he turned the ignition key. The engine started on the first try, as if it too wanted to leave this place as quickly as possible. He drove to the highway and stopped at the roadside. The asphalt looked real, normal. Cars occasionally passed by. Their headlights flickered in the darkness like beacons of civilization. Jack took the gold bar from his pocket and placed it on the dashboard. In the light of the instruments, the metal gleamed dully. It was real, heavy, cold. Proof that everything that had happened wasn't a dream or hallucination. But was the old man real? Or was he, too, part of the desert's mystery? Jack turned on the radio. Ordinary music poured from the speaker, rock and roll playing on a station from Las Vegas. No interference, no voices from the past. Just normal music for normal people in a normal world. He looked at his watch. 4 in the morning. An hour's drive to Las Vegas remained. He could still deliver the cargo on time, get his $300. And the gold bar. The gold bar would change his life. $25,000. Enough to pay off the most urgent debts. Enough to buy Mary something beautiful and ask for forgiveness. Enough to start a new life.
But where would he say he got the gold? How would he explain its origin?
Jack thought about this as he drove down the highway. By the time the lights of Las Vegas appeared, he had a plan. He would say he found the bar in an old house he bought for demolition, or that he bought it from a collector, or that it was a family heirloom.
People would believe. People are always ready to believe simple explanations.
Jack delivered the cargo of canned goods exactly on time. He got his $300 and a check for $25,000 for the gold bar from a jeweler who didn't ask unnecessary questions. He bought Mary a bouquet of roses and a gold ring with a diamond. He paid off the most urgent debts. He repaired the truck. Mary forgave him. They made up, and life became better. But at night, Jack often thought about the desert, about the black truck standing in the moonlight, about 39 gold bars that still lay in the hidden compartment,
About the old man who had vanished like smoke.
and sometimes, when the wind blew from the east, bringing the scent of the desert, Jack heard the distant sound of chains dragging across sand.
Chapter 6. Shadow in the Sands.
3 months had passed since that night in the desert. Jack tried not to think about what had happened, but memories returned at the most unexpected moments. Behind the wheel of his truck, when the radio caught interference. At home, when Mary slept beside him and he lay with open eyes, listening to night sounds. In roadside cafes, when other truckers told stories of strange encounters in the desert. Life really had become better. The debts were paid off, at least the most urgent ones. Mary smiled again, wore her new ring, and talked about children. The truck worked like clockwork after the repair. But Jack couldn't shake the feeling that something remained unfinished. 39 gold bars, almost $1 million, lying somewhere in the desert, guarded by the ghosts of dead men. In the end, temptation proved stronger. Jack told Mary he was taking a haul to San Francisco. Instead, he drove to Nevada, to Highway 95. This time he was better prepared. He brought water, food, a shovel, ropes, and a gun, though he wasn't sure if weapons would help against ghosts. He found the turn without difficulty. The crooked sign still stood by the roadside, half hidden by brush. The dirt road was as rutted as before. But when he reached the valley, the black truck wasn't there. Jack stopped where he remembered the truck with gold had stood. But there was only a smooth surface of sand, without tracks, without depressions, without signs that a vehicle had ever stood there. He got out of the cab and examined the area. Maybe he was wrong about the location. Maybe the truck had stood a little farther away. Jack spent the entire day in the valley, searching every square yard. Nothing. No traces of the truck, no signs of gold. Even the tracks of his own tires from the previous visit had disappeared, as if they had never been there. By evening, he was forced to admit the truth. The truck wasn't there. Maybe it had never been there. But then, where had the gold bar come from? Jack sat on the sand and took out a photograph from his pocket, a picture of the bar he had taken before selling it. The gold was real. The jeweler had confirmed its authenticity. The serial number matched records of the missing truck. So the truck had existed, but where was it now? The sun was setting beyond the horizon, painting the desert in shades of red and gold. Jack knew he should leave. Night in the desert was dangerous, especially for a lone traveler. But something made him stay. He built a small fire from dry brush and sat beside it, looking at the stars. The desert was quiet, except for the distant howl of coyotes and the rustle of nocturnal animals. Then he heard the familiar sound, the clanking of chains. Distant,
metallic, coming from somewhere deep in the desert. Jack stood and peered into the darkness. At first, he saw nothing. Then, at the edge of his vision, movement flickered. A figure was walking across the sand, tall, thin, with a walking stick in hand. The old man. He approached slowly, his steps leaving no tracks in the sand. In the moonlight, his figure seemed translucent, like a mirage. "You came back," the old man said when he reached the fire. His voice sounded like an echo in an empty cave.
"Where's the truck?" Jack asked. "Where's the gold?"
The old man sat on the sand opposite him. In the firelight, his face looked even more gaunt than before. "The truck is where it belongs," he replied, "in the past."
"What does that mean?" "It means you got your chance, son. 1 bar as agreed. The desert won't give you more."
But there were 39 more bars.
There were, but greed is a sin the desert doesn't forgive.
Jack felt anger boiling up. Greed? I just wanted to provide for my family. 1 bar was enough for that. Why do you need more? Jack couldn't answer because he knew the old man was right. $25,000 would have been enough to solve his problems. But he wanted more. Always more. "Who are you?" he asked. "What are you?" The old man smiled sadly, like a man who had carried a heavy burden too long. "I am the one who guards the secrets of the desert, the one who gives people what they need, not what they want."
"Are you a ghost?"
"I am what remains of a man who once made the same choice you did, who found gold and couldn't stop." Jack felt a chill of understanding. "You were looking for that truck too?" "Long ago, when I was young and foolish, like you, I found it, took the gold, all the gold, and paid the price." "What price?" "I stayed in the desert forever, became part of it. Now my task is to test others who come here with greed in their hearts." The old man stood, leaning on his walking stick. In the moonlight, his figure became more and more transparent. "Go home, son, to your wife, to your new life. Be grateful for what you received, and never come back here." "What if I do come back?" "Then you'll stay here forever. Like me, like Frank and Joe. The desert is always hungry, and it takes those who can't control their greed." The old man began to move away, dissolving in the moonlight like smoke. "Wait!" Jack shouted. "How do I find the way back?" The old man's voice came from far away, like a whisper of wind. "Follow the stars, son. They always show the way home to those who are ready to see it." Epilogue. Echo. Jack Hartley returned home the next day. He never told anyone about his second journey to the desert. Mary asked how the haul went, and he said everything was normal. They lived a long and happy life. Jack never gambled again, never took risky loans, never dreamed of easy money. He worked honestly, loved his wife, raised the children they had. Sometimes, driving along Highway 95, he saw the turn to the old mine. The crooked sign still stood by the roadside, but Jack never turned there. He knew the desert remembered, and that some treasures are too expensive to pay for. And deep in the desert, where time flows differently, the black truck still stands in the moonlight. Frank Morrison and Joe Kelly guard their cargo, waiting for the next traveler who will be desperate enough or greedy enough to turn off the beaten path. And the old man still walks across the sand, testing the souls of men, offering them what they seek, and watching to see if they can stop when they have enough.
The desert is patient. It can wait forever. And it is always hungry.
The end. As our tale draws to a close, I'm reminded of an old saying. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, but the road to wisdom is paved with hard choices. Tonight, Jack Hartley walked that second road. In our modern world, where we're constantly told we need more money, more success, more everything, Jack's story reminds us that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is say enough. The desert highway where Jack met his mysterious guide exists not just in Nevada, but in the landscape of every human heart. We all face that choice between taking what we can get and taking only what we need. If tonight's story made you pause and reflect, please share that reflection with others. Your thoughts and comments create a community of listeners who understand that the best stories aren't just entertainment, they're mirrors that help us see ourselves more clearly. This is Frank Sterling, grateful for your time and your attention. Until our paths cross again, may you find your own wisdom on whatever highway you travel.
There's a highway through the desert where the shadows never sleep, where the ghosts of broken dreamers their eternal vigil keep. I was driving through that darkness with my troubles weighing down, when an old man by the roadside said, "Boy, turn your life around. Don't go chasing desert gold, son, it'll burn right through your soul. What you need ain't what you want, and let contentment make you whole. The devil's in the details of the greed that makes us blind. Leave that cursed treasure buried, and you'll find some peace of mind." He told me about a truckload, 40 bars of shining gold, lost out in the wasteland by two men whose hearts grew cold. Said, "I've seen 1,000 seekers come and go along this road. Some take just what they're given, others bear a heavier load. Don't go chasing desert gold, son, it'll burn right through your soul. What you need ain't what you want, and let contentment make you whole. The devil's in the details of the greed that makes us blind. Leave that cursed treasure buried, and you'll find some peace of mind." I took one piece of silver from that graveyard in the sand, enough to pay my debts off, enough to make a stand. But when I came back looking for the fortune left behind, the desert had reclaimed it, and I nearly lost my mind. Now I drive that lonesome highway with a lesson learned too well, that the road to easy money is a pathway straight to hell. Keep your hands upon the wheel, boy, keep your eyes upon the road. Don't let greed become the master of the story that you're told. Don't go chasing desert gold, son, it'll burn right through your soul. What you need ain't what you're wanting, let contentment make you whole. The devil's in the details of the greed that makes us blind. Leave that cursed treasure buried, and you'll find some peace of mind. There's a highway through the desert where the wise men learn to see that the greatest treasure's knowing when you've got enough to be free.